Welcome to Real Estate Radio Live, an informative and engaging podcast discussing everything you need to know about the world of real estate. Your host, Joe Caccera, provides you with insight and guidance on how to buy, sell, finance, and invest in real estate. He also offers real estate tax management strategies, new construction advice, home improvement tips, and much, much more. And now, to guide you around the world of real estate, here's your host and Real Estate Radio Live team leader, Joe Caccera.
Welcome in, Joe Caccera with Real Estate Radio Live. Thank you for those that are following us on Facebook. We appreciate that very much. We want to continue to grow the show, grow the audience. The way we do that, we could certainly use social media. However, this is a podcast, and for almost 8 years we've been providing the consumers with education and information. We'll continue to do that. Download the podcast if you would. Share it with friends, family, coworkers. You could do that by going online and just typing in Real Estate Radio Live and get the podcast anywhere. iTunes, anywhere online. You get to download it and follow the show at your convenience. Most of you know, for almost 8 years, again, we've been focused on education and information. For the most part, it's been in and around real estate in general. However, we have a year or so ago stretched our legs a little bit and opened the box, and we're doing some different shows that are a lot of fun and getting a lot of good reception. We have Jack Russo back in studio today. Typically, we like to do these once a week if we can, depending on our schedule. So last year, just kind of a quick review. Go back and you could listen to the podcast, but we had a great first year starting something new in Silicon Valley. The whole idea was starting a business. How do you do it? There's a lot to it. And we went through that, took that series. This year, we're going to step 2 or level 2, if you call it, or phase 2, maybe, or 2.0, however you want to call it. That is growing your business. And so we've been talking about that. We've had some featured guests. We may have one call in today. We're not sure. We'll see. But in the meantime, we'll get kicked off with this topic. Good to have you back in, Jack.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me. Sorry that I was a bit delayed. Another accident on 85 coming down here, and
it's the price we pay.
And you got to give credit to Elon Musk, because he's like, if every car were a Tesla, there wouldn't be any accidents. Yeah. I think there is something to that, because it's got this radar system around it that alerts you that stuff is happening when you're not paying attention. Mm-hmm. Not that I caused the accident. I didn't. It was way down the road. But it does slow things down in Silicon Valley, and it does cause people to wonder if we're too crowded. And what I was thinking when you were talking about real estate is now a technology play. Yeah. So you have to talk technology. Right. And, of course, I've been doing this for nearly 40 years and seeing startups left, right, and sideways. So this idea that we did last year of starting something in Silicon Valley, or based on Silicon Valley principles, if you want to make it more broad, is now growing something, and we've developed this theme that says there really are 7 essences of growth for a company, and I'll just review them quickly because we're going to focus on one. Last couple of shows have been on the first, which is the importance of the team and getting the team right, and we could spend the entire year talking about that. We won't, but we spend a couple of sessions on it, and it's probably worthy of more, but we don't have the time to do that. So the second essence is the team typically visualizes a technology. Now, usually it's an area. Usually it's fairly specific. Sometimes it's too specific. Sometimes it's too broad. Sometimes it's too early. Sometimes it's too late. But that's the area this show should focus on. But let me recount the other 5 essences. Okay. And some people would say, no, don't go to technology. Go to customers. Is there a need? Is there a demand? Is there pain? Is the pain serious enough? So there are people that hear me talk about this, and they say, you got your essences wrong. Yes, I agree team is important. Yes, I agree technology is important. But customers are most important. And if there isn't a customer, there's not a business. We had on Steve last week, and Steve was like, well, why don't we talk about customers? Because without customers, there's no revenue, there's no sale, there's no business, there's no going concern. There's no need for an accountant. Yeah. Who needs an accountant if you don't have? So he was like, before you talk about legal or accounting, how about talk about whether there's demand, whether you've identified a market or not?
That's a good point. And I guess it depends maybe on the industry, the product, the service, what have you, because there's a good point. You have an Uber, which is a pretty glaring example of they developed this technology. They figured it was already ready to go. People adapted to it pretty quickly. But there are incidents over the history where people are too soon, right?
Way too soon.
Because
way
consumer, the lack of acceptance or maybe timing?
I tell the story. I told it today to a client that came in. I said, look, many decades ago when I was at great law firm, then Davis Stafford, Kelman and Fenwick, now Fenwick and West, and we were growing that law firm. A guy walked in, literally, we were shocked, a walk-in client to the 8th floor of an office building in Palo Alto, Palo Alto Square buildings, and said, I need a lawyer. And everyone looked around saying, well, who are you? Who referred you? And the woman who was at the front desk at the time, the receptionist, said, well, we'll give him to Jack because Jack is so flexible. Well, it was Jaron Lanier who was the creator of virtual reality.
Interesting.
That was over 35 years ago.
Wow.
I was just a relatively young associate at a growing law firm, and I was listening to his story of how he created the concept and the beginning of the technology that became virtual reality that only now, today, all the patents that we obtained for his company, VPL Research, all the work, it's all expired.
Right.
It's all public domain. Now, there's new patents that are building on top of it, but the field is reignited by the fact that batteries have gotten small enough to actually be in a wearable device without having a plug that has to plug into like an outlet.
Right.
That's a big achievement. The battery technology enabled so many things that could not be enabled over 3 decades ago. Now, Jaron's still the inventor. His name is on the patents. He did a lot of work.
Wow.
He's now a book author and speaker, and he goes around talking about maybe there's too much technology. We should have him on a show at some point. But I wanted to recite the rest of these 7, which is you really want customers, and maybe that comes ahead of technology, but we're going to take it in the order I gave it, which is technology. But there is an interaction between customers. Is there demand? Is the technology right? Is there something that really fits? Does the team see that? Do they have vision? And that's all before you get to step 4 or essence 4, which is financing. Now, you have to have some financing because you got to put food on the table and pay your rent and do things like that. But the big financing, usually, if the team, the technology, and the customers are not squarely in place, you're never going to get that big financing. I mean, indeed, you at least need all 3 in some context. Maybe it's not perfect. Maybe it's not exactly refined. But the people who give the financing are going to want to believe that when you take the financing, you're going to be able to get to step 5 or essence 5, which is scaling through marketing and distribution. You're no longer just inventing. You're actually implementing and getting it out there. And then step 6 along the way is you better get some IP protection or other barriers to entry. And step 7 is you better anticipate that there will be competition because there always is. It's never occasionally it's a monopoly, but very rarely is it a monopoly. And there are forces that are going to work to dynamically change the game. So you're constantly improving on the marketing, improving on the scaling, improving on the customer messaging, improving on the IP, improving on the technology, and improving on the team. So it becomes circular.
Right.
You're constantly then building a better team. You're building a better technology. So those are the overall 7. And I thought we could do a show on each of them, and we did 2 shows on team, and I'm thinking this show could be on technology and how you're right. Occasionally it's too early. Jaron could have been a billionaire if he was a little later.
Right.
And actually the battery technology and other technologies were there. They weren't there yet, but his idea was there, and it was time for him to try it out. He did a lot of interesting stuff. Now maybe he's turned out to be a billionaire anyway. I doubt it, but some people time it perfectly. Webvan was before all these delivery systems like Safeway.com and others, and they sort of pioneered what Amazon is now taking advantage of. You can go to Amazon today and get groceries delivered from Whole Foods literally the same day.
Yeah.
I mean, Webvan, I think they wanted a day or 2 of advance notice.
Right.
So being early, being late, I mean, it's all over the lot. And you see a lot of people that are too early, and it's painful because they are pioneers, and they're often the ones that take the early arrows.
Yeah.
And they die on the trail kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it's not always necessarily you. Sometimes I think the new kind of excited entrepreneur person thinks first to the market is always the greatest and best way to go, but in many cases it may not be.
Well, there's studies out, if you look at some of the research, there are studies out that talk about, and hopefully Chris Beall is chiming in, because I want to invite him, because Chris and his company, ConnectAndSell, and you'll hear more about, Chris is the CEO, and I called him at the last minute, so I know he was running late. But Chris and his team, he's got a great team. He's got an exceptional team. He'll talk about it. He's got an exceptional technology that enables you to more rapidly connect with your customer base or your potential customer base. So a lot of people think the telephone is dead or the telephone is dying. I'm sure Chris is going to tell us, no, that's the best way in which you actually get through to the customer, short of having a face-to-face meeting, which you can't have these days without calling someone on the phone.
Right.
I mean, I remember when I used to go to my grandparents' house without calling them, it was fine. These days,
can't do that.
We laugh because Lee and I were like, yeah, I remember that. Well, now we can't even go to our kid's house and expect to come over without sending 6 emails and 5 phone calls. They're like, we didn't expect you. You got to give us more advance notice. And we're a kid. We used to have keys to our grandparents' house. We would just go in. They were like, fine, come over whenever you want.
I was just going to say, I used to let myself in, and all I do would eat.
Yeah, of course.
Growing up in an Italian family, that's all you did.
Because grandma or grandpa were always cooking.
That's right.
And they never thought, you got to let me know. You got to give me. I mean, today.
No, they welcomed it.
Always.
Yeah.
And it was never you're too early or too late. You shouldn't be here now. You should leave. They were like, stay over. It was okay. So having the team that's building the technology, and the story of Chris, and I don't know if Chris,
are you there?
Phone? Is Chris here?
I am here.
Oh,
There
Chris,
you go.
Good. You've been listening to me give the overview about the 7 essences of company growth, and I pulled you in, Chris, at the last moment, because I think ConnectAndSell, the company you're the CEO of, and you use their technology, really has a breakthrough technology. And I thought you'd want to comment a little bit about what you're doing and how ConnectAndSell is doing what it's doing, and the charge that you're leading up to enable a revolution in how people use the phone for lots of things, including obviously making some major and maybe even some not so major sales.
Yeah, great to be on. Good to see you, Jack.
Thanks.
It's been a little while.
It has. I owe you lunch or dinner for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what happened is really interesting. Back in 2003, thereabouts, voicemail became ubiquitous, and folks acquired the habit of just letting phone calls go to voicemail. And it got to the point where more than 95% of all phone calls now go to voicemail.
Wow.
And the other thing that happened is people got tired of voicemail, and over about a 3-year period, 2003, 4, 5, the listen rates on voicemails went down by 30% a year for 3 consecutive years, so effectively zero. So suddenly you couldn't talk to people. And our view at ConnectAndSell is human conversations are the essence of getting relationships going. They're the essence of building enough trust to begin to actually talk about the potential of doing business together. And we cut ourselves off accidentally. It was like voicemail was supposed to be this great thing, and it cut us off from human conversations. And now businesses, whether they're reaching out to other businesses or even reaching out to consumers, it's just really hard to get those conversations to start a trust relationship and start to move the needle in the direction of, what do we do in sales, right? We start with fear. Everybody's afraid of each other. There may be some annoyance. And then we try to move through trust, because we got to get that to get to curiosity, to get to commitment, and to get to action. If we can't get to trust, we're sort of in a hard place. And you can't do it with email. You can't do it with Facebook. You can't do it with any of these things, because they don't have enough information that gets deep inside of a person into where their trust centers are. We don't trust somebody because we read something. In fact, just today, just moments before I got on this call, one of my finance people sent me an email. It said, from Chris Beall, and it actually looked like a good email address. Can you help me make a payment? Regards, Chris, right?
Yeah.
Oh, brother.
Yeah. Pure phishing exploit.
Yeah, right.
And yet it was so sweet and innocent. Now I would not use the word regards when I'm talking with my own employees. That's a little weird.
Right.
But still, there you go. So why don't we trust digital? Because digital doesn't carry enough information to let us actually cross that barrier, that human barrier, and begin to trust somebody else. And so we got to start with a conversation, and that's what we let people do.
Chris, this is Joe Kuchera with Real Estate Radio Live. Thanks for being on. We appreciate that. I think the description you used is outstanding. I think is relevant and really makes a lot of sense. You're trying to connect with the business or a person to build that trust to somehow connect with the business or service. How does that equate to the whole social media component of it? In other words, a lot of people would say, the way to connect would be a Kardashian where they got 10 million followers and there's a drive for business and there's an element of trust there that they just, because it's a person, or are those really two different types of sales activities or connectivities?
Well, I think they're related, but in an interesting way. People kind of play the Kardashian card as though the Kardashians came on the scene magically through social media.
Yeah, true.
They didn't. Right.
It's a good point.
There were some precursors to that.
Yeah, there was the OJ case. Let's remember that. Right. It was the father that was doing the OJ case. He was, or part of the OJ Dream Team. But more than that, television kind of made them take off, true. Right?
Absolutely. We know that in the world of sales also, none of us are Kardashians. We're not going to make ourselves into that big brand and do that before we die, right? We will go out of business before our brand takes over for our ability to actually sell. We got to sell along the way or we go broke.
Yeah.
So the idea that, hey, I'm going to build a social presence and everybody's going to love me, that's got two problems. One is it's going to take too long, and the other is it's noisy out there. It is really, really noisy. And it is very hard to elevate above that crowd. It's very easy to do in a one-on-one conversation. If I can push a button, and this is what I apologize because this is our product, but I'm stuck talking about it.
No, that's okay.
No, we want you to talk about it.
Well, so our product lets you push a button and have a conversation with somebody on your list exactly like calling an Uber. So when you hit the Uber button, you've got, 3, 4, 5 minutes on a good day, and then a car shows up. And not only does it show up, it takes you to your destination, most of the time, right? With ConnectAndSell, when you push that button, so you log into our system, you just use a regular telephone, you use a web browser, and you pick a list. And when you push that button, it's just like an Uber, except instead of a car, you get a conversation with somebody on your list. It takes about 3, 4, 5 minutes. And now you're in a situation where you have a shot. Now, if you suck, we amplify suck. There's no shortage of suck out there, Jack. Who's not going to have a suck shortage? We're suddenly, the president's going to get on and say, ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Americans, we have a suck shortage. We're running out of suck. That's not going to happen. But if you're good, if you can use your voice in order to get somebody to begin to listen to you and begin to trust you, you have an advantage over everybody else. And the funny thing is, at that point, social media works. Now when you reach out to somebody on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram or whatever, you've just had a conversation with them, you're their one and only for that moment.
Yeah.
And that's really the key to social is start with a conversation. Then go to social and email. And be basically shooting from up high on the hill rather than trying to climb the hill.
Yeah, I want to make a point here that's worth weaving in. There's a great book. It was done about 10 years ago. It was by Stephen Covey, and he had a co-author, Rebecca Merrill. It's called The Speed of Trust. It's really worth reading, whether you're in sales or not in sales. Really, if you're trying to connect, it talks about in business, whoever amplifies the speed of trust has a huge competitive advantage, and most people don't understand that. They don't understand, and even young lawyers, you try to train young lawyers, why is it so important? They'll say to me, particularly the Gen Zs, they're really young people, why is it so important to actually meet the client? Why is it more important to have an office and meet the client at your office? Because you're developing a trust relationship that you want to accelerate. Why is the airline business exists for business passengers beyond leisure? Because people know they've got to amplify the speed of trust. They've got to develop trust. They've got to make trust happen. And if that doesn't happen, they probably won't get the customer, which means they won't get demand. And if they don't get demand, they won't get financing. And what's the point of having team and technology if you haven't developed a customer base that's actually going to try and maybe tell you what's wrong with your product, because that's an area where ConnectAndSell can speed things up as well, right, Chris?
Yeah, I've been doing startups for I don't know how long, Jack, 40 years, I guess.
Almost, probably as long as I have, really.
Yeah, probably. We're both youngsters, I realize, but we started very, very young, probably 8, 9 years old. So, you know what? I was taught something by a venture capitalist who was also a good friend of mine, and I'd worked with at a previous company. His name is Venkat Mohan. And Venkat used to tell me this. He said, I won't invest in a company unless I have sold their product over the phone. And I said, what if they don't have a product? He says, no, that's not important. The message is the product. You take the message out and find out if in that target market you can get resonance. And how do you know if you've got resonance? Can you set meetings? If you can set meetings with the message and you can build a product that matches the message, you can go dominate a market. And so what we let you do is take that market dominance play and run it 10 times faster. So I'm doing a series right on LinkedIn, a series of videos, taking folks through the process step by step of how to dominate a market, how to take your market, turn it into a list of companies, turn that into a list of people, take a message, and talk to them. And I've got a customer right now, I can't name them, sadly, but just to give you a sense, they're in the 401k advisory services space. And that's a new part of 401k, probably 3, 4, or 5% of the total right now. And they have the number one position in terms of assets under management by doing this. They have 11 sales reps, and they had 330,000 conversations last year in the SMB space, small, medium-sized businesses.
Wow.
And they're now number one.
That's a lot. That's a lot of conversations. Wow.
So, you know, if you have the conversations first, you make your competitor work for you. Because they only have two positions they can take. One is they can agree with you, in which case they're working for you. And the other is they can disagree with you, in which case they're an idiot because you've already established the terms of what's true in a trust relationship. So if you're first to converse and you converse with your entire market, we call it playing chess with one new rule. Make 64 moves and then say to your opponent, your turn. Why don't you go for it? And we think that the ability to generate trust across your market before your opponent, before your competitor makes the first move is the key to market domination.
Chris, take a minute to explain a little more in detail about your product and service technology in terms of, you said, scans a list and then you look for a live call. Is that assuming that it goes through a list and then it will connect when it grabs a live call, assuming that it goes through a list, and if they're not grabbing live, then it keeps going?
And I just did the fast math while you're thinking about this, Chris. It sounds like they're doing more than 150 conversations a day during the regular work year, times each of those 11 people, times the number of work days in a year. I don't know. I just did the fast math. 330,000 conversations sounds like a lot of conversations for 11 people, right? It sounds like
they're having a lot of conversations.
They're having a lot of conversations, right?
Yeah, and good ones too, because they're practicing. They're always good at it because they get coached all the time. You can coach somebody a month's worth of coaching in a day when they're having that many conversations. Yeah, so Joe, the way it works is a little bit more sophisticated than that. So what ConnectAndSell does is gets you to your target.
Okay.
So if your target is a person who's at work, so whether you're reaching consumers or reaching people as business people, most people are working most of the time. You might only have the main number of their office. The ConnectAndSell system will actually navigate all the way to the target, make sure it is the target, but still transfer the call so fast without ever talking to the target that for them it's a completely normal phone conversation. So say I were on your list, and you would log in to ConnectAndSell. You'd log in both through the web browser and the phone. And then you would push that button to talk to somebody on your list. So say I'm your lucky victim. I answer the phone. This is Chris. The next thing I hear is your voice, and it's instantaneous.
Okay.
So it's like, hey, Chris, Joe here. I know I'm an interruption. Can I have 27 seconds to tell you why I called? And I'm going to go, sure, Joe, go ahead. Right? Whatever it is you want to say.
Right.
That's the magic of it. It's the target. And the way we do it is we use technology and trained phone navigation experts in concert with each other. So we have people actually navigating those phone calls, not making the dials, navigating the phone calls.
Got it.
And they're doing the work you don't want to do, and we're doing it 5, 6, 7, 8 at a time.
But when you think about this in terms of the game-changing nature of it, you have to have people that are really willing to keep pitching fastballs or keep receiving fastballs, whether they're a pitcher or a catcher. I don't know what the analogy is. But that takes a special talent. So I would think your better salespeople are going to rise to the top, and maybe your worst salespeople are going to immediately be identified and drop to the bottom. Is that what you see as part of this as well?
Yeah, you find out who is good right now. You also have an opportunity to make them better. We run a little thing called Flight School, where in 4 Connect and Sell Blitz and Coach sessions, we can normally get an average rep into the top 5% of all cold callers in the world. It's about 8 hours of work. But that's a special place to be, to have that confidence and that competence to be able to handle a first conversation. It's pretty simple, really, in a way. You've got to take them to a point. And I think all salespeople need to learn this. Get to the point where you're comfortable being the problem. You know, the most reliable thing in a first conversation is you are the problem.
Yeah.
Offer a solution to that problem, and you get trust. Most salespeople wimp out right at that point. They don't want to be the problem because their moms and dads and, you know, who knows, maybe when they're older, the cops once or twice told them to stop being the problem. And you know, that's a tough place to sell from because you are the problem. When you interrupt somebody, you're the problem, right? Yeah. So we teach people how to springboard off of that reliable foundation of the problem and get to an appointment, which is kind of the first thing you got to do is get to a scheduled meeting so you can talk to each other in a little bit more relaxed way without an ambush.
Got it. Do you think that the new generation, what I've called the Gen Z people that seem to love social media and love staying behind their iPhone or smartphone or tablet or whatever they're using, they're not really picking up the phone or even using the phone as an audio device. Do you think they're hesitant to become pitchers or become catchers, or what are you seeing? Because I look at my kids and grandkids, and man, it's like the phone is ancient. They just look at the phone like, are you crazy? I don't want to answer the phone. It could be someone spamming me with voice. You know, people that call and ask you for money or ask you for a favor or, hey, how about helping me move this weekend? What are you seeing on that in terms of Gen Z versus Gen X versus, say, millennials?
Well, there's good news, bad news there. So you gave the bad news, which is lack of familiarity with the phone, lack of eagerness. But when they take a job in sales, they know they're going to have to talk to people. I mean, you can't really be a salesperson without talking to anybody. And the people you want to talk to aren't in the same room as you. So you're going to have to talk to them on the phone or a video conference like this or something. But your first conversation is likely to be on the phone. So that's the bad news. The good news is they're really easy to teach because they're easy to learn. And they don't have bad habits. So we love them. From the Connect and Sell perspective, we love the young people entering the workforce because they don't come with a bunch of baggage. To them, it's a challenge, like learning a video game. And they're great learners. This is the greatest learning generation that we've ever had in terms of experiential learning. And if you can give them an experience rather than instruction, you give them an experience and let them learn from the experience, they become very, very good very fast. The rest is just being a human being.
I mean, the good news here, Chris, has to be this is an area where you cannot put a robot in and you can't just put an AI system. There's so many nuances to how you get a sale from inception to trust to speed of trust to meeting to actually close. That is not something that I can see lobotomized. I can't see that Amazon can do that for anything other than basic commodities, which is mostly what it sells. I don't think it sells super yachts yet. I don't think anyone would buy a super yacht or a boat or a plane or anything.
Anything of high value.
Anything of high value. There's got to be like a house.
Yeah.
It's like a house. You keep saying you got to have a real estate agent. Right. They're not going to trust that we can just do this over the internet, right?
Exactly. As soon as the purchase is scary, you have to have a salesperson.
Yeah.
And B2B is all scary, the entire thing. Because you risk your career on a considered purchase in business to business. And, you know, mostly as consumers, we're not risking that much, right? But when we get to a car, when we get to a house, for sure, we're risking a lot. We're risking not just our money, but relationships in the family, our reputation, a whole bunch of stuff is at risk. And we need to trust somebody more than we trust ourselves. And this is what I've been going around telling people is, you know, the reason most buyers in business to business or real estate, anywhere, don't make a decision. Because that's who we lose to, right? I mean, we don't lose to the competition most of the time.
No.
We lose to no decision. And the reason we lose to no decision is simple. Because none of the sellers get to the point where we trust them more than we trust ourselves with this decision. The seller's the expert. So we should be able to trust their competence, but we don't trust their goodwill enough that they're on our side. Or maybe we don't trust their competence. We don't think they're an expert. So the B2B seller and the real estate seller, folks with the high value stuff that's being bought, they have a very high bar that they've got to get over, which is they've got to get that buyer to trust them, the seller, more than the buyer trusts themselves.
All right. Good point. We have about 3 or 4 minutes left, Jack. I want to make sure we get as much value.
So
here.
what we've been doing, Chris, is we've been doing this series. Last year we started a series called Starting Something. I wrote a little book about it. I'll send you a copy of this series this year. I'm in the process of writing another book that's called Growing Something. And, of course, as you know, because you've been in a lot of the pitch meetings that we've had historically where young guys come in or young gals or teams come in, and they want to know, like, how do we get off the ground? And I've reduced it to these 7 essences. You might say there's more or less, but you have to have a great team. You have that at ConnectAndSell. You have to have a great technology. You have that as well. You have to have customers that have a real need. Well, you're in an area where there's an endless amount of need. Accelerating sales is what every startup and other companies, big companies, want. You have to have financing. You have that. You have to be able to scale the business with the right marketing, the right business development, the right distribution, the right whatever. You're engaged in that. And then you have to have IP protection or some other barriers to entry. Typically for a startup, in a technology startup, it's patents or copyrights or trademarks or trade secrets. And then you have to have competition, which is what is the competition now doing to attack you? I don't think you guys have competition, so you might want to come on when we get to that later stage of that show, but all these things work together in harmony. We're focused now on the technology because we covered team in the last couple of episodes, but tell us a little bit about how you see, because you're one of the pioneers in growing this business. It's been in growth mode for a while. I mean, give us your sort of overview of how you've leveraged and learned from the process, because the technology has gotten faster and faster, better and better, and cheaper, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love your 7. Those are, I think, spot on. Anybody who wants to grow a business, they got to have all 7. You identified our tough one, which is competition. Our biggest competitor happens to be venture capital. Because venture capital allows somebody just to hire a bunch of people and think they've solved the problem. And so every once in a while, we kind of look forward to a time when maybe money's not quite so cheap and easy, because that'll be good for us.
But the venture folks should be all over you. The venture folks should be like, we don't want to spend a ton of money on a sales force they will churn out after 18 months of not meeting quota. I mean, that's a terrible, terrible use of funds. They should be all over ConnectAndSell for helping them figure out how to get those 11 people that'll do 300,000 calls and make all those sales to enable a leadership position, right?
Yeah, you would think so, but they have their habits, and they think of scale often in terms of just size of team. And so when they go back to your scale point, can you scale it? Their big concern is, can you hire the people? And that turns out to give you really big teams. So just leaving that aside, though, I think the big deal when you're going to market is, can you spend the least amount of money for the biggest amount of potential growth? And can you do it very, very fast? And that's what I think that we're all about, how we help startups. We have 2 markets, startups and companies seeking strategic advantage. The funded startups are easy. They're all in the same position. They have money. They don't have time. And they need to reach out and find their audience, find out who it is who's going to buy their product, and start selling. They have to make, what do they call it in the VC world, Jack? Progress.
Right.
They have to make progress before that next round of financing.
They have to get traction. They have to get some real traction.
Real traction. We provide them with a traction machine, and we include all the instruction around it. We do messaging workshops, all this kind of stuff. But what we really do is just charge for the dials. And the dials turn into conversations, and the conversations, if you do it right, turn into meetings, and the meetings turn into business or information about your product. So going fast is the key. One of the things I think people forget is it's got to be closed loop. If you're going fast, but you're not getting information back from the market in a place where you can make sense of it and do something with it, your speed is not going to do you any good. And so being able to have the principals at a new company actually participate directly in the growth, to give them a means to get out there in the front lines and engage in those conversations. That information comes back into their head rather than some salesperson on a commission who takes information. They bring back either deal, no deal. But you need the nuances when you're at the top And I think that's the big deal, and that's where the revolution is. We find the companies where the top people have conversations with existing customers and new potential customers and integrate that information into their plans, they're the ones who dominate.
Got it. Before we let you go, Chris, this is really good stuff. We'll have to have you back for sure, because this is, give us, those that are listening to the podcast, the thousands that are downloading it, if they want to learn more about your business or how to contact you guys, how would they go about that?
Well, www.connectandsell.com is our website.
Okay.
Ain't much to it, but you can sign up for what we call a free trial. It's really a full day of production use. Had a company the other day, and they were making $113,000 an hour in one of our test drives.
Wow.
That's great.
Test drives can
Those
be more
are some
than
good
just
testimonials.
That one was pretty interesting. I was there on site on that.
I like that.
It was pretty stunning. They were selling $2 million boxes that saved 20% of the electricity in the factory. So it was pretty cool stuff. But that's one place to go. Following me on LinkedIn can be worthwhile. I do a lot of stuff. I'm Chris8649. I'm easy to find. Chris Beall, CEO of ConnectAndSell. And that's really kind of it. I'm not super active out on Twitter or any of those other things. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of a LinkedIn guy.
Okay.
But I'm also, I believe up until 6 months ago, the only human being on earth who was publishing live sales numbers.
No, you've published some great spreadsheets that demonstrate that the top of the funnel really has to be full for the close cycle to happen. And a lot of even sophisticated VCs don't necessarily get that, don't necessarily understand that there's a journey that the customer goes through. But Chris, remind me why you're Chris8649 at LinkedIn or on LinkedIn. Is the 8649 some special code that opens up some special lockbox somewhere or what?
So 8649 spells Unix on a keypad, U-N-I-X.
Okay. I thought there was something to it. All right.
Yeah, I developed the Unix and C curriculum for Bell Labs back in 1982.
Very
interesting.
So I reoriented my whole career around open systems back then. I used to be a software developer. Right. And so that's why I started building companies and why I had to learn to sell, because if you make products, you got to sell products.
Right. Chris is very humble, but he's got like 50 or 100 patents under his name. He is like a major inventor. And you've got a lot of patents for Connect and Sell. So another way is just search Connect and Sell on patents.google.com, and you'll see all this technology is more or less out there described, but it's all protected by patents. So you've got some barriers there, and you're doing stuff that other people haven't really done. It was interesting that you said your competitors are essentially dumb money by VCs, not necessarily dumb VCs, but they think in old ways, and they're doing stuff that would be better done in the way that 11-person sales force is dominating their particular segment that they figured out how to do with a relatively small group of people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, we just got a new patent today approved. It'll issue in August.
Congratulations.
Right as you called me, Jack, I was signing the assignment to assign it to ConnectAndSell.
Well, that's great. Congratulations, Chris. And do you actually have a phone number, too? There must be an 800 number for ConnectAndSell. Let's give them the phone number. They are in the phone business.
Here's my cell, 408-203-4321. Elon Musk wants to buy that
there
number.
You go. Well, that's a good number, and you'll take calls, right? People call, and they say, I want to do the test drive, and I want to hear your voice. You're on the phone all the time. I mean, I was lucky enough to get you at the last minute, so I appreciate you being spontaneous on this.
It helps that it was your name.
I need to connect with Chris and talk to him about
it.
Well, you got a new customer today because Joe is here salivating, saying 11 salespeople are going to do 300,000 calls. I want to start that. I want to get a few of those people.
I'm going to reach out to you offline here, Chris, for sure, with the company we got with B2B. So I'll reach out to you about that.
He's got Bundle Select that's trying to do something really innovative in real estate, and you'll see it in a minute, Chris. You'll get what he's doing in a minute when you go to the website and you talk to Joe. And Joe's got all kinds of people that could use your talent and the talent of Connect and Sell for sure.
Well, the test drive's a lot of fun, Joe. It's unlike anything else. I had a lady, general manager of a very big company the other day, say to me during a test drive, I asked her, what are your thoughts? She said, I have no thoughts, Chris. I have tears of joy in my eyes.
Wow.
You have turned my son.
Man,
said,
wow.
my silent library into a sales floor.
I love it.
Wow, you need to take some videos of those moments, man.
Exactly.
That's a good story.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for coming on at the last minute, Chris. I appreciate it, and I owe you lunch and or dinner the next time we can get together, and I'll look forward to that. And give my regards to Sean, because I'm still waiting to sort of hear his presentation about Connect and Sell, because I always hear your presentation. I keep saying, when is Sean going to go on YouTube or some other media giving a presentation? Because it's been a while since I've heard him pitch, and I know he's great at it.
Well, we only need one Kardashian in the group.
There you go. Congratulations.
Yeah. Good. Thanks for coming on,
Chris. Thanks
All right. Thanks a lot, Jack. Thanks,
sure.
Joe.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Well, that's a great, as we close out, boy, that guy, he was strong.
Oh, he's a great guy, and he's flexible. You know, I had another person lined up who's got a different technology, whole different category. And, of course, he said, hey, I'm in the middle of something. I thought I could do it. I can't do it. And literally, as I'm driving down here, I speed dialed Chris, and he's like, yeah. If I can break off the phone. He's on the phone 10 hours a day.
It's just impressive. You could tell he's passionate. You could tell he knows what he's talking about. And some of those testimonials are remarkable.
Hugely remarkable. And they're trying to do something that most people don't think can be done, and they're demonstrating it can be done. And they've got a relatively small team. I mean, it should probably be a bigger company, but they're very, very careful about not adding too much headcount.
Yeah, you know what
they want to go. They want to go fast, but they want to go fast with technology.
What I love about what they're doing is that in a day and age when, let's face it, every single person in company and VC and everyone else is trying to get rid of the human.
Yep, they're not doing that. The human's right square center.
Right.
Really.
And what Chris just did, if you were fortunate enough, as you download this podcast, you want to listen to Chris carefully and have him take you through that path, is the value of that trust and the relationship and where that gets connected. That'll never happen with an email.
Right.
Won't happen with a text.
Right.
Won't happen with Facebook.
Right.
There is a lot to that, and it's good to see. Good to hear.
It's the reverse side. You know, when you look at AI, there's two schools. There's a school of like what is the hot AI, which is we're going to have machine intelligence, so artificial intelligence. Then there's the IA, which is the opposite. We're going to take intelligence and augment it with machines.
Yes.
So this podcast is like a big amplifier. We've only been able to do it because the cost of equipment has so come down. A studio like this used to cost $1 million to construct years ago.
Or distribution channels.
Right.
How do you get it out?
You couldn't do it years ago. You had to be a big radio station.
Right.
Now you can set up in a room, in a nice room like you have here, and with all the right equipment, really high quality, and it can happen within the means that you can afford to do it. And it has created this world of podcasts on every topic imaginable. That is called taking intelligence and augmenting it. Without you, there wouldn't be a show. Without me, there wouldn't be a show. Without Grant, there wouldn't be a show, because we're amplifying our voice. That's the notion of intelligence augmented. That's not AI. There's no robot behind these nice microphones.
Absolutely. Well, that's a great show. Real quick, if you need more information, Jack Russo. Jack, where can they reach you?
Sure. Jack Russo, managing partner at Computer Law Group in Palo Alto, California. We also have an office in San Francisco. The phone number is 650-327-9800. Also, the email is jrusso, JRUSSO, @computerlaw. That's one word, computerlaw.com. We help startups. We met Connect and Sell. They had a different name back then, but I want to say it was like almost 10 years ago. They've been growing this company steadily. They literally forewent taking venture capital and just did a lot of organic growth. So I'm a big fan of them, big supporter of them, believe that they're onto something, believe the future will be something that will be like Connect and Sell, if not Connect and Sell itself. And I think they have this interesting logo he didn't mention that has the no dialing. Because once you press the button that you're going out, man, the calls just start coming in. You just start connecting. You've got to be able to make the pitch. And a lot of people don't like getting out of the comfort zone, but they do have to get out of the comfort zone to do it.
All right, good show. Again, for more information, go to RERL-1640-Live.com. Be sure to download the podcast. This is Joe Kuchera sitting alongside Jack Russo. Thanks for the time. Take care. Have a great afternoon.
You've been listening to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's program, visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com. Subscribe to our podcast. Discover more at RERadiolive.com.